It's very lovely to be here in beautiful Germany. I've been here for a week now, and I am absolutely amazed how green it is in the middle of summer. If you ever have the pleasure of visiting Adelaide, you'll see huge brown fields. Probably don't come in summertime because it gets pretty hot. I'm here today to talk about this package that I've been working on for far too long now, called unicodemath. And the first time I spoke about this was 5 years ago at TUG 2010, and I cannot believe how quickly the time has flown. Unfortunately, I haven't actually done that much work on this package in that time, and that's the reason that I'm up here talking about it, because I made some decisions early on which probably weren't the best decisions to make. And back then, what was quite a theoretical idea of using unicodemath fonts is now, with LaTeX and Zeeta being more and more widely used, is something that's become quite relevant. And having these problems in this package has been quite a sore point for many people up until now. So luckily for you all, there's a new version of this package coming out in the near future, which should hopefully solve all of your complaints. But please talk to me about it today or over the next few days, so that I can, if there's anything that I do that you disagree with, then we can fix that up. Now, for those of you who are not aware of what unicodemath is, it's a package which allows you to use a open type maths font which has a whole set of Unicode data. Now, I couldn't have arranged this better if I'd planned it. There's a couple of big posters over here by the Polish group, which demonstrate a huge swath of the Unicode characters. In fact, is it all of them? If it's not all of them, it's most of them. The advantage of Unicode maths is that switching fonts becomes as easy as switching text fonts. So it's been a long time coming, but it means that people can communicate a lot more reliably in mathematics, to the point that you can even copy and paste things to some degree between, say, something like Microsoft Word and LaTeX, as abominable as that might sound. So here's a demonstration of this package where you load the thing and you can set the maths font. So it's very straightforward. Way back when I first wrote this, I thought it would be neat to be able to load different fonts for different characters, because we've all had that experience where there might be a font that's missing a glyph, or maybe you don't like the glyph that it has. And an advantage of that is it means that you can actually load different character ranges in different colors if you like, because in Zeeta you can assign a color to a font, which is kind of neat. So I know this has actually been used in some, I think, high school mathematics work by somebody on Stack Exchange anyway, where actually differentiating the glyphs by color was really helpful in saying, well, this is something that applies to these symbols around it, and these symbols are, well, symbols. So you can see what's going on down the bottom there. We're loading, in this case, Cambria Math, which is Microsoft's maths font, a number of different times here with a number of different colors. Now, this is probably slightly easier to demonstrate in real life. So what I'll be talking about today is that there's a few changes that I've needed to make as it's become apparent that the ranges of fonts that we use in mathematics is rather sophisticated and subtle. But this is an example of using unicodemath, where we've loaded the package and set the font. And this first section here, it looks quite straightforward. We're writing /simbf, which is sort of like mathbf, but a bit different. We'll talk about this in mathbbr cubed. And if you typeset that, it'll look exactly as you expect. Now, in unicodemath, the way that it works is it uses this amazing data structure written by Barbara, which contains more information than I know what to do with about all of these different unicodemath code points. It's analogous to the data files that Joseph was talking about for his Unicode data and text. And so you can come across here, and there's a whole bunch of things which describe where the command comes from, what a symbol's name is, what its code points are, and what its related things are. And you can see with this scrolls through very, very, very far. We'll keep on going. There's about 6,000 lines which have been handwritten by Barbara, so thank you very much.
Is it updated for you?
There's a few things that we do need to discuss about how to, I suppose, make this more of a standard thing so that we can share this data around. But my understanding is that it's up to date on Barbara's computer. Okay, so I should have said in here, if we take a look, it gives every single code point in mathematics a control sequence. So we have, this is completely arbitrary here, /mbfttl, which is obviously bold typewriter maths, capital letter L, which is at Unicode code point 1D67B. So this is in the plain 1 area of Unicode once they realized that 16 bits was too small to fit all of the characters in the entire world into. So rather than writing, say, /symbf, we can also just put in the straight command, and this is actually much more efficient. I go back and forth about thinking about whether this is actually a better interface or not, but we provide both, so you can use what you like. But then you would have been watching Joseph's talk and seeing all of these Unicode glyphs come up in his text document, and you realize, well, we can actually use Unicode glyphs in our source documents now. So this is entirely optional. You do not need to do this. But if you have something like /BBBR, you could put in a code completion in your editor so that if you hit, say, escape, or no, tab, it actually turns it into the Blackboard R. Now, in many cases, this is not really necessary, but it's kind of neat, and it does make reading your source a little bit easier. So I'm not saying that we should turn everything into Unicode or anything like that. And a lot of people are happy with just writing maths with ASCII letters, and that's totally fine. But for the people that kind of are a little bit interested in this sort of thing, that is supported. And it helps with, say, copying and pasting maths from PDFs or online or Microsoft Word documents. So there's a few other things that is also supported. For example, if you actually get a superscript 3 into here, it will still render it correctly in mathematics, but we won't go into that. So you can see down the bottom here, I've written bold X in R cubed. Now, this shows an obvious kind of disadvantage of using the actual Unicode glyph in here, because if you write a plain X, it looks very similar to that mathbfx. If we write, say, mbfitx, I think, oh, it does sort of like a first matching, so obviously X sort of matches there. You know, if we start to actually paste all of these different glyphs into our text, it actually might get more confusing than less confusing. So I'm definitely not advocating for using all of these glyphs in the authoring process. But as you can see, we compile a document and we get the same thing every time. 1, 3 of these. And changing this font is as easy as coming up to the top and saying, let's choose the Tech Gaia font for Pagella instead. Typeset, and then we get something different. Oh, I accidentally changed that source down the bottom. No worries. So this is pretty fun because it means that for the first time, it's actually feasible for font designers to create new maths fonts without having to be LaTeX geniuses and go through and do all of the mappings. So we're seeing in the last 5 years that there has been a relative explosion of Unicode maths fonts being designed. There's still only maybe half a dozen or so, but that's great progress in my opinion. So what has gone wrong? I said that there were some decisions that I made that weren't so great, and there's this issue with the fact that LaTeX was invented a long time ago, and it did the best that it could do. And Unicode maybe doesn't have a perfect mesh with LaTeX. So let's see what I mean by that. In this case, this is what LaTeX does by default. You might write something like fin in maths f. That would be f multiplied by I multiplied by n equals math it fin, which is obviously the word fin with some sort of identifier in some sort of case. And as you would expect, the f multiplied by the I multiplied by the n has got a little bit more space in between because they're separate symbols, whereas the fin is done basically in a text font as a word. So these are obviously very different things, and they could be in very different fonts if you chose to there. The problem is, when I first wrote unicode-math, I did it as a literal translation from the Unicode. Unicode only has one italic mathematical range, and so, it would make sense to map it to that range, which is where all the symbols come from. So in unicode-math, originally, there was no difference at all between fin and math-it fin, which, in hindsight, was not very sensible. And then there are other related issues with things like math-bf. Now, math-bf is a real funny one for me, because I am not a mathematician, and the way that I use math-bf is for things like matrices and vectors in a physics sense. So I was always used to using math-bf for actual symbols. As I'll show you, math-bf has got a whole other set of uses in mathematics where you want bold words, and so bold words needs to be spaced differently and use a different font than bold symbols that are next to each other. So with the default, if you write fin in math-bf, you get the ligature, you get that spacing for text. With unicode-math, up until now, you get f multiplied by I multiplied by n in all bold symbols. So something needed to be fixed. Which brings me to my talk. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the Unicode mathematics thing, which I guess I have already. And the funnest part of putting this talk together has been going out and actually finding examples of maths. And I wish I had more, and I probably will run out of time, so it's probably lucky that I don't. And lastly, I'll talk about how Unicode Math actually uses tech to implement all of this very interesting stuff. So we've had a bit of an introduction of what Unicode is, and in terms of the mathematical side of things, there's around about 2,500 sort of unique glyphs, although Barbara's source code goes for much longer than that, so I need to basically figure out exactly what is necessary as a pure mathematics and what's necessary as just Unicode slots in general. So thank you again to Barbara. For the best thing about this table is that it has given us a standard set of names for all of these symbols, which has now been inherited by MathML and so on, and David is the authority to ask if you have any questions about that. So as a non-mathematician, I really love scrolling through these tables of glyphs, and you get all of these funny shapes. And you're like, I wish I could use this in my work. Actually, the advantage, I believe, of Unicode Math in the long run is that I think people like engineers and so on that don't usually use a very large repertoire of symbols might be able to, in a nice and standardized way, hopefully, adopt a few more symbols to make their terminology a bit more, less overloaded. We use things like times for all sorts of different things. Probably shouldn't. So, as I said, we get control sequences for all of these. Now, some of them are matched up from AMS symbols. Sorry, this is not very clear. Some of them are matched up from what's in plain tech, and then other ones are either brought in from other maths legacy symbol packages or have been invented with very sensitive discretion. Now, we can see up here, this is just a whole bunch of different fonts which have been loaded to display the different glyphs in the different fonts, and you can imagine there are a whole lot of these. So, access to the symbols is really great, and generally everything is perfect. We load the font, we can get the glyphs, everything works. Plus or minus a couple of tiny little kind of things that either maybe not well considered in Unicode, and maybe a couple of names that slipped through the cracks that now are kind of frozen because they've been inherited by all the web browsers. But probably the best example there is that there are a few symbols that we use in LaTeX in particular. We have control sequences which refer to the same symbol, but with different math spacing around it. And Unicode doesn't distinguish between, sorry, I can't think of the example. Let's say it's a triangle with a little bit of space or a triangle with a lot of space around it. It just gives you the same thing. So, say? They may accept it now, yeah. So what will be great is when more people use this, then we can sort of flesh out what we actually need, go back to Unicode and round out what they give us. And then this standardization thing where we've got the web browsers which are implementing names, we've got us implementing names. Obviously, we've also got context and so on implementing, in some cases, their own names for things. It's probably about time that some smarter people than I, and maybe me as well, sit in a table, around a table together and discuss these things. The controversial, did I hear someone yell? My apologies. So there were some controversial choices in how Unicode was put together for the math stuff, in that it has individual glyphs for all of the different W's and all of the other letters that you may come across in its different forms. We've got the upright, the italic, the bold, fractal, the script, and the blackboard, and the sans serif, and then there's more. Now this has a very strong rationale, as we were seeing with the PDF stuff, is that if you've got the glyph in a document, it has a meaning all on its own. So it's better to have a W which has got a different shape and it's a different slot than to simply change the font to put it there, because it means that it has more meaning in that document, whether it's on the web or wherever. And how this translates to LaTeX is sort of where I went wrong, as we've introduced up until now. So we've got all of these alphabetic symbols. Now, as I said, these are the symbols which are used for the actual variables. Say fin would be the f times the I times the n. So they have spacing which is suitable for individual letters in mathematics. We then have, obviously, we have other ranges there for the Greek letters, and we have other ranges for the, say, the blackboard, and all of the other alphabets that I was talking about. And interesting, and what I should have done is, really when I first started this, was to step back and say, what does LaTeX actually do with all of these math alphabets? How does it break down all of its different areas? So we have basically the math normal things, letters and Greek symbols. Then in fluid dynamics, for example, you have symbols such as RE for Reynolds number, which needs to be spaced for text because it's sort of like an abbreviation of a word. We have obviously operators like cos and sine and so on, which need to be in some sort of an upright, spaced for text situation. And then we also have text that you insert into your maths, which is like, for 0, theta between 0 and pi on 2 or whatever. And this needs to be in your actual text font, which might be different than your text font that you're using in your maths for your operators. And then we might have things like a little T for transpose, and depending on who you are, you might make this italic, you might make it upright, you might even put a little funny symbol in it, which looks like that. And it's going to be one of these fonts, who knows which. And as I've discovered, we also have these bold words, which we might put together as another sort of operator. It needs to be spaced for text. And then the upright bold symbols, which need to be spaced for maths. So finally, all of the funny ones like the double struck and whatever, and they're quite obvious. Okay, so we've got many of these different alphabet styles used in mathematics. In fact, we have more of them than are squeezed into Unicode. So there's a little bit of a tension there between trying to get as much in as we can. And in tech, obviously early days, 7-bit or 8-bit fonts, it achieved all of these different styles by switching fonts. You had a letter A, and you went from your italic font to your blackboard font. In mathematics, however, they're all, in Unicode maths, they're all in the one font. A question? Just stretching. You should stretch with both hands then. Now, so they are all in the one font, or perhaps maybe not. You might be loading different fonts for the different ranges, or you might have some of these, say if you have the Stix fonts, they have private use area alphabets, which you might need to load separately. Or historically they did. Things are obviously maybe slightly in flux as they come into Unicode. So Unicode itself doesn't make this distinction between symbols that need to be spaced for text and symbols that need to be spaced for maths. So we've got like the sign X and the RE and the HOM. And in Unicode math, these were always called MathRM, MathIT, and MathBF, just because that was how it translated from the Unicode, but that didn't mesh with how LaTeX has been doing it for the last 20 years. So that gave me a good excuse to give this talk. Now, how much time do I have? I'm really 15 minutes. Good. I've got a few examples here that I had a lot of fun collecting. So, the paper by Reynolds back in early 1883. He actually didn't. He was a pretty nice guy, and he didn't use his own name in the term that he developed, the Reynolds number. But finding this paper was quite interesting because we see that it's a little bit fuzzy, isn't it? Can I zoom in? How about if I go into like the full screen instead? There we go. We can see that in the Transactions of the Philosophical Society of London back in the 1800s, they used upright letters here for their mathematical symbols. So this is an example where you would have an upright glyph that is spaced for maths. And nowadays we call this style French maths or something. So hopefully it's not too offensive to, I don't know, either side of the people on the pond. You see some other funny things in here, like the decimal place, which is more than halfway up the line between these numbers.
Can I really ask a question?
Yeah, please ask a question.
That I is italic, okay? That was
Oh, sorry. So the capital letters are in upright, and the lowercase letters are italic. So it's just like the old, I guess.
That's complex number, right?
I have no idea. I don't think it is.
No. Or is it? Is it?
No. Not for fluid dynamics, I think. So a more modern example of this upright mathrm that should have math spacing is with the exponential e, for example. Some people are very finicky and they want to have that e upright because it's a constant, not a variable. Occasionally you might see other things like people putting an upright g in if they don't really realize that gravity changes depending where you are on the Earth. A couple of little notes like that, but of course we also have d by dt, which is sometimes upright, sometimes italic, depends on your taste. This guy who's an applied mathematician in control systems, this is a book that I legitimately read for my PhD, and it was really fun to read because he ran out of symbols to use, as we'll see as we go along. But there's a couple of interesting things about the typesetting in this book. So as I said, he's got that upright E, which we can see on the right there. And he's also using the italic E because, like I said, he ran out of other letters to use. Now, it's worth kind of just noting that all of the upright Greek in this textbook happened to be italic, just one of those things. I guess that's either more modern or means that the typesetters didn't have taste, depending on your own tastes as well. So that's upright with math spacing. But obviously, we have lots of cases where you would have upright with text spacing as well. And the operators, cos, sine, blah, they're all obvious. But I don't want to restrict this to fluid dynamics, but we've got these other dimensionless numbers in engineering, I guess you'd say, which, like RE and this FR, the Froude number. This is probably the most interesting paper that I've ever stumbled across. The only engineering paper that I've seen I'm probably the only one ever that references Gulliver's Travels, where they were using this dimensionless number to compare the walking speeds of the different sized people. I should put up a link to these slides and you can, I can send you the paper if you're interested in it. However, using the upright here is not, it depends on who you read. Some people use upright, sometimes you'll see the italic. In fact, later on in this paper, he's using the italic there for Froude. So maybe gait and posture don't have very careful. Hopefully that's none of our typesetting friends' journals that they do here. No frowns. Good. Okay, and then obvious ones, you've got the operators here. And we've got this RE, which I only just noticed after I put this example in, which is, lots of people sometimes use the fractor, and obviously if we've been talking about the Reynolds number, that's kind of confusing to put that in there. Obviously it's not Reynolds number in this case. And if you're not very I guess if you don't have very much taste as a mathematician, sometimes you'll just have a fraction where you put words and sentences in there, which I guess works in some cases, but I think it looks pretty ugly. But you know, this is the type of thing that you need to take into account. Okay, so that's the upright stuff. What about Math BF? So another old fluid dynamics paper, or book perhaps, 1916 by Horace Lamb. And obviously kind of, this is, I don't know if this was done in metal type or what, but the, obviously not very clear here, but he's using these bold symbols, which we see all the time. This is just an excuse to pull out an old book and give you an example of it. A couple of other interesting things to me is that he's using capital letter D for this d by dt thing. I don't think I'd see that very much. And this is something you don't see these days very often. You'd see et cetera, and you know, et cetera, at the end of an equation. They're kind of cute. More modern sort of thing, this is from my thesis, where the bold symbols are for vectors or matrices or whatever. So that's Math BF in a mathematical context in terms of the spacing. And then we come along to something like category theory, where Math BF is used for words. So we've got group and ab and group and things like that, where the spacing here needs to be different. Now, I'm not in this field, so see later on we've got these examples here where we've got r/z. It's not actually clear to me whether that would be the same bold as up here or not. It's presumably not.
No, definitely not.
It should be.
Not.
Definitely not. Good.
The reals and the integers in that context.
Yeah, so things get a little bit subtle. So what I started to realize was that we can't use just one command, Math BF, for all of these. It just doesn't work. Now, I'm here to talk about alphabets, but I really like the fact that Unicode gives you all of these symbols, and I came across a few funny ones. So back to this book where I said the guy ran out of symbols. You can see we've got an upside down omega here, and then he's using epsilon and var epsilon in the same equation. You can imagine the other var things are also scattered around here and there. But you know, generally understandable. By the context, you didn't get confused. He's using, in this case, he's got pi as a function, which I believe is not that uncommon really, but it looks a bit strange to an engineering, someone from engineering like I am. And something here for Boris. This must have been where he really reached his limit, and he decided to put in a Cyrillic letter as well.
Cyrillic.
It is.
No.
Well, it is in this one. It's is it Cyrillic U?
No.
Well, anyway, at the time when I was reading this paper, I had no idea it was perhaps a Cyrillic character or not. I thought he just changed the font and made it bigger to make it differentiate it from the other letters.
No relation to Cyrillic.
I see. I apologize for the error. So we can't stop mathematicians from coming along and putting in whatever they find, essentially. So this was some funny ones, I thought, in terms of using sigma and pi in both bold and not bold. Sorry, sigma capital pi, where you need to make sure that all of these sorts of things are very clearly differentiated from their product and sum forms. And we see now here an example where they're using an operator where you've got the italic text. So it's becoming more and more clear that if we're going to put a word in front of a brackets or something, we need to be able to facilitate whatever fonts we like. So again, operator here det, which in this case is italic. And
what is lightning?
And exactly. This paper, I mean, some physicists thought it would be very cute to put a lightning bolt in as a symbol. So I thought that was kind of fun. Dr. Seuss is here for the rescue in case we run out of all of Unicode. We can go into... So this is from On Beyond Zebra by Random House. I wouldn't be surprised if this was in a font somewhere, but I believe it's not in Unicode yet.
I'm pretty sure I can make a point. It's just a special linkage for
The very last one is my favorite. Anyway, so that's the fun part of the talk. Hopefully not running out of time quite yet.
6 minutes.
6 minutes, gee. All right. So luckily for you, I'm running out of time, so I'll just skip all of the boring technicalities about how this has to work, really. So in plain tech, essentially, you define maths fonts by using the /font primitive and loading in each font separately. In here, we can see we've got a few colors and just to visually differentiate things a little bit better. And to make these fonts active in math mode, we have to create math families with new fam and then assign those families in with the primitive text font. And then there's a script font and so on for the superscripts and subscripts, and there you go. So when you try and start switching to Unicode maths fonts with these techniques, we immediately discover the problem being that, well, you can't just switch fonts because you also need to switch the glyph slot. If we're putting in an ASCII ABC, then it needs to switch to plain 1, as we'll see in a second. So what we have to do is remap the math codes from ASCII ABC, etc., into this 1D44E and so on. And so that gives us these plain 1 letters here on the page. Now, for consistency, we may as well also remap the text Greek symbols, because who knows what people are going to be pasting into the source document. So this is text alpha, beta, gamma being mapped into the mathematical alpha, beta, gamma. You can turn that off if you want to in Unicode Math, and that's only active for the actual mathematics context. And then to change to bold, for example, you need to remap again. So we'll have a whole big stream of these umath code definitions, where we go from 1D44E now to 1D482 to get to the bold italic A. So this is a little bit more intensive, I suppose. If we want to have a command that you just put in ABC or whatever, and it switches to this different area in Unicode, because it means you need to map a lot of things. So I guess this is, I think I've said this in words, so we can skip over this a little bit. As I've said, in traditional tech, you've got, let's say, capital letter A, which is 65. That goes to 65 in your maths font, or 65 in your bold font, or glyph number 65 in your calligraphic font. Easy just to switch. Takes about, on this computer, I think I timed it at around about 1 microsecond to switch fonts, so nice and quick. So in Unicode, we have to now change that every time we want to change font, font range, style ranges, I guess. We shouldn't say fonts. We go from 65 to all of these 1D434 for regular maths, or 1D400 for Math BF, and so on. So, where do I have it? Like I said, Unicode Math originally did this kind of badly because it used these old commands here, Math BF, Math IT, and so on, for the math stuff. But actually, traditionally, it used text and this broke a lot of things for a lot of people. So we've gone through and we've seen that we've got a couple of different alphabets for the bold. We've got a couple of different fonts for the italic as well. Math spacing, text spacing. They're all separate, and we can't use one font for all of them. So for Roman, for example, we've got text RM and math RM. These could be separate again, and it's not even clear what Unicode provides. You can go into ASCII, but it's up to the font designer whether they space that ASCII for text or if they space it for maths. You could even have a switch in the font, so it's the one font that does both, but you have to load it with a different feature. So we've got a small handful of maths commands in LaTeX, which we need to support. I'm going to ignore bold symbol and BM for now, because I don't really know what it is supposed to mean in Unicode land. But what Unicode does provide is a whole lot more alphabet. So we've got blackboard, blackboard italic, script, bold script, calligraphic, bold calligraphic, fractor, bold fractor, etc., as well as all of these bold upright, bold italic, sans serif upright, sans serif italic, and some combinations. So when I made that choice to use the Math IT etc. Naming didn't work out because of people that wanted to put in italic text in a maths context. So the only solution that I could come up with is to just make a new symbol name. So I now have, as well as Math BF and Math SF and all of these ones, we also now have /SimBB/SimCal/SlimSap/SimBF, which explicitly refer to mapping simply within Unicode. Now, if you want a different name here than /sim something something, please let me know now, because I'll change it soon and then I don't want to change it again. We then do a couple of tricks in the package so that all of the traditional MathRM, MathIT, MathBF and so on get saved in special ways within LaTeX. So we can always get back to where we were with MathTextRM and MathTextIT. Generally, users won't need to use this in practice, but it's there just in case. And then we can adjust things to make things as easy as we can for the user. So there's never going to be confusion about the fact that the fracture symbols from Unicode are actually from a different font. So we may as well call MathFrac the same as SimFrac. But then for things like MathBF, it's kind of up to the user whether they want the math spacing or the text spacing. And so we have a package option to change that. Okay, so about all of these symbol ranges, I'm running out of time. At the moment, they don't operate like the text commands in that if you write SimBF brackets SimSF, it doesn't kind of conglomerate and produce bold sans serif. Maybe it should. It sort of depends what the mathematicians want, I guess. Now, all of this mapping has to be completely reversed, undone entirely, when we want to go back to the old techniques and basically just load a new font in maths, which is like the traditional LaTeX method. So this latest version, which is not released yet but coming out soon, fixes commands like declare math alphabet. So you can use all your traditional commands to get new alphabets, and you can have not as many as you like. You can have up to 256 now with ZTech and LaTeX, so much less likely to run out of these. And we have a user-level interface to them as well called, say, set math font face, which is a little bit easier to use than declare math alphabet because it uses the more modern loading things with the file names or whatever. So as a really quick example here, we can say set math font face, and let's load the Tech Gaia chorus font. It's in medium italic. And we also have a command here to set the operator font to use this, just because that's fun. As you can see, we now have a kind of like a script signing cos. And you'd be like, why would you want to do that? Well, I've got an example for you here. Foundations of algebraic geometry. And I don't know if this was a usual sort of choice, but I think that they wanted a little bit of curliness in their operator home here. Okay, where are we at? Bit of mucking around inside internal LaTeX stuff, pretty fun. Ask me about it. And so this is the code that has to run whenever you switch from just regular maths into, say, in this example, this is like what's called sim literal, where there's no mapping at all. And it's probably not actually complete, but you need to go through every single letter that might be affected by this change in range and change its math code, which is not as quick as just changing the font. It's around about 100 times slower, so it takes about 100 microseconds to do this, which, I don't know, depends on your computer, is either good or not good. The way to avoid this is to maybe make my code a little bit smarter so that it can special case all of the obvious ones and then just only do this general thing when it needs to. And in addition, you can always just jump in straight and use the symbol without having to use the wrapper around. So, finishing off, what this new code allows us to do is, for example, if you have Greek mathematics, when you write sine and cos, they are written in Greek. And so this is not a good example because it's from a school book, but you can see here that you've got cos of omega. Unfortunately, in this case, they're all using the same font, which I think is very hard to read. I don't know if the kids found it any easier than me. So in unicode-math, what we can do is set the MathRM font to something like Courier Regular. Thank you very much for making this available. And then we set the math font to, say, the Pagella. And when we write /mathrm, and then we've got the Ida mu in here, brackets omega, we can make sure that you've got the text font here, which is coming out in Greek because we have the Greek letters in that font, and then the omega is coming out in the proper maths font. And that would be a lot less confusing for the kids. And it occurs to me that math RM probably stands for math Roman, therefore it's not really appropriate if we're putting in, say, Greek letters and all this sort of thing. So there's also, in this package, you can now also call this math up, which is a little bit, I think, less culturally insensitive. But I was speaking to my friend Nino in Berlin the other day, and he always thought that RM, math RM, just meant remove after, you know, the tools in Linux and whatever. So maybe not that bad after all. Very lastly, again for Boris, my favorite new symbol in mathematics is the SHA function, which sometimes is just three eyes squashed together, as in this case. But if they do it properly, it should look like this. And so this is used in a couple different contexts in mathematics. It's basically the only Cyrillic letter which is used commonly, I believe. And we can now do this in Unicode math as well. So let's say you want a particular font for your Cyrillic symbols. So we set this math font face. In this case, we've loaded Charter, but that's probably not very good. And then we can just type this into our mathematics, and we get the output that we expect. So this is so when we write math, this Y here is from the Cyrillic range, and you can see that it's similar to that one that I found earlier, but I'll talk to Boris about sort of resolving this afterwards. So this is a big table that basically gives us what we've got. All of the text RM, text IT, text BF, text SF, text TT, whatever, they come from the text font. Math RM, Math IT, Math BF, etc. They also come from the text font. The spacing around the letters is different. Like, it ignores spaces and allows superscripts and things like this. And we have these new commands, sim up, sim IT, sim BF, which change where you're coming from in Unicode, take those plain one letters, and then use them. So in this case, you can see that we haven't done very much with the math setup, so these top two rows are still in default Commuter Modern, or Latin Modern, I suppose. And down here we've loaded the sticks font, so we can see that it's a little bit subtle, I suppose, in this particular case, but we've got the Times-like look of these symbols here. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure coming along.
We're actually over on time, so